Richard Vale leaned across the auction table, smiled at my father, and said, "Your daughter's worth is less than my debt." 30 people laughed while I held a pen above a marriage agreement that would make me Richard's wife and give him control of everything my father had built. Then the doors opened, Alexander Kane walked in, placed a $100 million certified check beside my hand, and quietly told Richard, "You just auctioned something you never owned." 3 months later, my father's company was worth more than ever. Richard was being led into federal court in handcuffs, and the secret clause inside Alexander's contract had become the most expensive mistake Richard ever made. Before we begin, dear friends, please help me. Your subscription is very valuable to me. Please subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. My name is Maya Bennett, and 6 months before that auction, I still believed my father's biggest problem was bad luck. Bennett Continental Logistics had been his life for 27 years. He started with 2 delivery trucks, a rented warehouse, and $12,000 borrowed against my grandmother's house. By the time I turned 30, we operated 86 trucks, 3 distribution centers, and contracts stretching from Chicago to Detroit, Indianapolis, and Milwaukee. Our annual revenue had reached $43 million. Then everything began collapsing. First, our largest pharmaceutical client canceled a 7-year shipping agreement without warning. 4 days later, our insurer increased our premium by 38%. Then First Midwestern Bank froze a $6 million revolving credit facility after receiving documents claiming we had violated our debt covenants. My father, Thomas Bennett, stopped sleeping. Every morning, I found him at the kitchen island before sunrise, wearing the same gray cardigan, drinking coffee he never finished. He kept saying we could survive. I wanted to believe him. Then Richard Vale appeared. Richard had invested $3 million in Bennett Continental during a difficult expansion 2 years earlier. He wore Brioni suits, drove a black Bentley Bentayga, and smelled constantly of Creed Aventus. He called my father his friend. That should have warned me. Richard offered to refinance our emergency debt. The terms looked brutal, but survivable. 11.8% interest. A personal guarantee from my father. And a conversion provision allowing Richard to claim 51% of the company if we defaulted. My father refused. Richard smiled. "Think about Maya," he said. I remember looking up. Richard's eyes were already on me. Not my face. My left hand. Checking for a wedding ring. That evening, I found a cream envelope beneath the windshield wiper of my car. Inside was a photograph of my father entering the bank. Across the bottom, someone had written 4 words in black ink. He has 72 hours. I didn't call the police. I didn't tell Dad. I drove straight back to our office, locked myself inside the accounting room, and opened every financial record from the previous 12 months. At 2:17 a.m., I found the first impossible coincidence. The cancelled pharmaceutical contract and the frozen credit line were connected by one name. Vale Strategic Holdings. Richard had purchased a minority stake in our pharmaceutical client 11 days before they terminated us. 2 weeks later, a consulting company owned by Richard's college roommate had prepared the risk report First Midwestern used to freeze our credit. I stared at the documents until my eyes burned. This wasn't bad luck. It was demolition. And Richard had built the explosives carefully enough to make every disaster look legitimate. That was when something inside me became very still. I copied everything. Contracts. Bank notices. Vendor emails. Wire records. Board minutes. Then I uploaded encrypted copies to 3 separate cloud accounts and placed a flash drive inside my safe deposit box. At 6:40 the next morning, Richard called me. "Maya," he said warmly, "your father needs realistic options." "What options?" He chuckled. "Come to dinner tonight." I went. Not because I trusted him. Because arrogant men become careless when they think a frightened woman is listening. Richard chose a private room at a steakhouse on North Clark Street. His bottle of Chateau Margaux cost $2,900. He ordered for me without asking. Then he placed a folder beside my plate. Inside was a marriage agreement. If I married Richard, he would suspend collection on my father's debt and inject $8 million into Bennett Continental. If I refused, he would enforce every default provision and force an auction of our pledged assets. I read each page slowly. Richard mistook silence for surrender. "You'd live extremely well," he said. I looked at him. "And my father?" "He keeps a ceremonial title." Ceremonial. 27 years of his life reduced to a decoration. I closed the folder. "I need time." "You have 6 days." I smiled faintly. Richard smiled back. He had no idea I had activated the recorder on my phone before entering the restaurant. Over the next 5 days, I discovered something worse. Invoices from 3 shell companies showed that nearly $4.7 million had been siphoned through inflated maintenance contracts. The approvals carried my father's electronic signature. But Dad had never signed them. Someone had duplicated his credentials. Our IT logs showed the authorization requests originated from an outside address linked to a contractor Richard had recommended. I finally told Dad. He went pale. Then he whispered, "I trusted him." I squeezed his hand. "I know. What do we do?" We let him believe he won. The auction was scheduled for Friday. Richard expected humiliation. Instead, I called a number I had kept for 5 years. Alexander Kane answered on the second ring. "Maya?" I froze. He remembered my voice. 5 years earlier, I had found Alexander bleeding beside an overturned SUV during a blizzard outside Rockford. I had driven him to the hospital myself. He had disappeared afterward, leaving only a card with one sentence. "If you ever need me, call." I finally did. "Alexander," I said, "I need help." He listened without interrupting. Then he said, "Send me everything." 48 hours later, I walked into the auction hall wearing a navy dress and carrying Richard's marriage agreement. My father sat beside me, looking 10 years older. Richard arrived smiling. He believed the building, the trucks, the contracts, and me were about to become his property. When bidding stalled, he leaned toward Dad. "Your daughter's worth is less than my debt." Laughter rippled through the room. I picked up the pen. Then the doors opened. Alexander Kane entered with 2 attorneys, 4 security officers, and the kind of silence powerful men carry without demanding it. Richard's smile weakened. Alexander placed a certified check on the table. $100 million. "This covers every secured obligation," he said. Richard laughed nervously. "You can't simply interfere with a lawful foreclosure." Alexander looked at me. "Show him page 19. I opened the agreement Alexander's attorneys had prepared that morning. It wasn't a rescue loan. It was a partnership. Alexander's company would acquire 49% of Bennett Continental, refinance every legitimate debt, and provide $25 million in expansion capital. I retained voting control with my father. But page 19 contained the trap. Any creditor attempting to enforce a claim obtained through fraud, coercion, forged authorization, or undisclosed self-dealing automatically triggered indemnification proceedings and immediate disclosure of supporting records to regulators. Richard stopped reading. His face changed. Alexander slid another folder toward him. Inside were the shell company invoices, IP logs, bank communications, recorded dinner conversation, and forensic reports proving the signatures had been duplicated. "You manufactured their default," Alexander said. Richard stood. "You have no idea who you're threatening." "I'm not threatening you." Alexander nodded toward the rear doors. 2 federal investigators entered. "I'm documenting you." Richard looked at me as if I had betrayed him. That almost made me laugh. 3 months later, Bennett Continental had expanded into automated freight analytics through Alexander's technology network. Our valuation passed $180 million. Dad returned to work only 3 days a week. He spent Fridays fishing. Richard's empire collapsed much faster. His lenders called their loans. His partners abandoned him. His penthouse was sold. His Bentley disappeared from the garage. Federal prosecutors charged him with wire fraud, bank fraud, conspiracy, and identity-related offenses. The last time I saw him, he was wearing handcuffs instead of cuff links. Alexander never asked me to repay the night I saved him. And despite what Chicago gossip claimed, our agreement never required me to marry him. That choice came later. Quietly. Freely. On our wedding morning, Dad handed me the old card Alexander had given me 5 years earlier. "If you ever need me, call." I smiled. Sometimes one act of kindness takes years to return. But when it does, it can arrive carrying justice. Exactly when you least expect it. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Let me know in the comments what you would have done.